My name is Tony Woods.
And my name is Gary Woods.
We'd like to introduce you to our two sons. This is Gregory, our eldest son.
And this was Matthew. They were killed by a drinking driver.
Gregory was very academic. He excelled in his schoolwork and in the whole learning process. Gregory was fascinated with flight, and his dream was to attend Annapolis and have a career as a naval aviator.
Matthew was 18 months younger than Gregory. He came along and was very, very different. He had a wonderful imagination and was a prankster.
Matthew was a very creative boy. He wrote a series of stories about a fictitious raccoon named Bandit and a fictitious dog named Nadja. These two characters roamed the world, establishing justice and making the world safe. This was his Bandit. Greg and Matt had many different interests, but together they loved to fish, to sail, to toss the ball back and forth in the backyard.
They were very good friends with one another.
I had to go on a business trip, and I took Gregory and Matthew with me. I promised them a day of fishing. We went to a sporting goods store and bought deep-sea poles. After we got the poles, we got in the car, and we were proceeding back to the hotel. A car was coming from a side street. It failed to stop, and it crashed into the side of our car. Gregory and Matthew were sitting on that side of the car. I was in and out of consciousness at the scene. I could see Matt's body on the road, on the highway. Gregory was pushed up against me. People were running around the car screaming with terrified looks on their faces. I begged God for their lives. I said, God, please take my life. Take my life, don't take my children. But Gregory and Matthew were pronounced dead when they arrived at the hospital. Of course, I have a great deal of pain wondering if they called out for me, and I wasn't able to help them.
I was taken to the morgue where I was asked to identify these two beautiful children. And I think the hardest thing that I have ever had to cope with in my life was looking at these two beautiful children on these steel trays and knowing that we would never share the love and experiences that a father has with his children.
When I became conscious, I didn't want to live. One of the nurses has told me I tried over and over again to pull out the life support system. The pain of losing your two children is just too great to live with. The pain feels like your arms and legs have been amputated and the blood is running from your body. You feel like you've been packed in ice. I had many physical injuries, but the physical pain was not 1/1,000,000th of the emotional pain I lost from losing my beloved sons.
The way that I tolerated a lot of the pain and suffering was to do as much physical exercise and physical activity as possible. I ran miles. I would mow the lawn over and over again. As a break from that, I would go down to the boat where we had shared so many wonderful experiences and sit and try to touch and feel the areas where the boys were. It also allowed me to forget that I was Gary Woods, because being Gary Woods was too painful.
Every waking moment is filled with a sense of pain. When you wake up in the morning, your first sense is, oh my God, my kids were killed. When you go to sleep at night, it's the last thought on your mind. I couldn't concentrate on anything. I couldn't read. I couldn't write a check. I couldn't remember two things in a row. I was just filled with an overwhelming pain. In the beginning, Gary and I thought we didn't want to live, that the pain was too great. We couldn't imagine that our life would ever be any better, that there would ever be any joy or happiness again in our life. And there were times that we talked of suicide. Why? Why these two beautiful children that were adored by their parents? These two guys had so much to offer the world. They were so full of life and so full of fun. Why did this have to happen? And it wouldn't have happened if someone hadn't chosen to drink and to drive. The person who killed Gregory and Matthew was not legally drunk. It was an impaired man that killed Gregory and Matthew. And they're just as dead as if he had been legally drunk.
My name is Glenn Birch, and I have two sons, Romley and Courtney. Courtney's no longer with us. He was killed by a drunk driver on May 3rd. And it seemed just like yesterday. I come home from a day's work. He greets me at the door, and I come in, and he's got the Nerf ball ready for me to toss to him. So I toss it across the room, and I see him run after it. And he brings it back to me, and I toss it again, and he runs after it again. You know, it's funny because he's just discovered running. No one could be prouder than I could. I can no longer experience those joys anymore. I remember the nights that me and my wife are in bed, and we cuddle up, and the next thing you know, I hear little footsteps running. Courtney's coming, and he tries to get on my side, but I don't let him in, you know. But Lena, of course, lets him climb on her side. He gets in the middle, and she hollers, "Move over, Dad! Let my precious in." She can no longer experience those days because Courtney's no longer with us. An ice cream truck was in the neighborhood, and the kids went out to get ice cream, Courtney along with them. And they were trying to cross the street, and when a speeding vehicle came, he was traveling over 70 miles per hour in a 30-mile-per-hour zone, and he hit my son. He was going so fast, he drug him 150 feet. Courtney never had a chance. My wife, Lena, was on her way home from work with her girlfriend, and they noticed a helicopter flying up above, like it was coming down nearby. And the thoughts are going through their mind, you know, hey, what's going on? And they're unable to get to the street where her mother lives to pick up Courtney. And then she looks out and notices her mom and her sister, and something tragic has definitely happened nearby. And it's her son. You know, I can't imagine the thoughts going through her mind. And then trying to get to him and no one letting her, and then the helicopter taking her baby away from her and not letting her go with him. I just can't imagine the pain and the suffering she was just going through, knowing that her baby was suffering and not being able to get to him. It wasn't until the next day that my neighbor told me that a drunk driver had killed him. I thought it was an accident. You know, it's not an accident because if you're drinking and driving, you know what you're doing. So it's definitely not an accident. As I traveled down the road, I wonder how in the world anyone could travel 70 miles per hour in a residential area when it's clearly posted 30 miles per hour. How in the world could anyone do it? You know, sometimes during the day I look at Romley and see him growing, you know, the different changes that he's going through. And I often wonder what Courtney would look like, because as I remember him, and I'll always remember him as how he looked as a child. The incident with the drunk driver has really broken up the whole family. My wife is not the same. I can't reach her. And there's times that she can't reach me. As a result, our family's not together. There's a void in our lives since this happened, and I don't think we can ever put it back together again. But you do have to keep on living. But I would not wish anyone to have to experience the things that my family's had to experience because of the drunk driver.
My name is Linda Pacheco. I'd like to introduce you to my husband, Jim. We want to tell you a story about my only son, Billy Almeida, whose life has been changed forever because of an individual who's been convicted for drunk driving. Billy was always a people person, very outward, very social kid. Billy was a very generous kid, a typical teenager. He loved his friends. He enjoyed music tremendously. He loved rock and roll, all kinds of music. We'd hear him from a block away pulling in the driveway with his music blasting. And it's probably one of the things I missed most. On Sunday, July 14th, we had received a call that Jim took, and we were notified that there was a bad crash. I finally learned that the crash involved Billy. He was the driver of a car, 3 passengers, on a local highway. He entered onto the highway at the last intersection before he got on an interstate. He was a short distance down the road when the driver going in the opposite direction, traveling at a high rate of speed, estimated somewhere between 80, maybe 90 miles an hour, hit a berm and was catapulted across the highway. That car hit the car that Billy was driving head-on. The impact caused a traumatic brain injury to Billy. His other passengers also suffered injuries, as did the passenger in the other vehicle. Billy was taken initially to a local acute care hospital, and the following day he was moved to Mass General. He spent 3 months in coma. In the first month, he went through 7 operations in the first 30 days. We were initially told that there was no hope, and we had made arrangements to donate Bill's organs. Billy surprised everybody when they took him off the respirator. He coughed, and that was a new hope of life. Right? You throw a big kiss? Whoa, what a big one. That's to Lisa? This is my son, Billy, as he is today, and he is in a nursing home, as he probably will remain for the rest of his life. Thirsty? Good job. Many of the things that we do and take for granted every day is extremely difficult for Billy. He loves Yoo-hoo, his favorite chocolate drink, but it's agonizing for him to swallow. His dreams were the dreams of most kids his age. Ready, 2, rock, and roll, right? What's that girl's name? Boney, open. Boney Maroney. And she's what? He had dreams of marrying and having a family of his own. He loved kids, and little kids loved him. Just seemed like a natural for him. And that's forever lost. Come here, you smell good. Come here. Thanks. All of this pain and suffering was caused by someone who acted very irresponsibly. Whenever we travel by this intersection, we wonder, what if? What if Billy would have been buckled up? What if there would have been an airbag in that car? The what ifs could have changed the quality of Billy's life today.
This is our son, Josh Jones. I'm John Jones, and this is his mother, Jeannie. And Josh was killed by a drunk driver at the age of 9.
Hi, I'm Joshua. What's your name? Your name?
Josh was a fun-loving kid. He loved to laugh.
Oh no, look at you.
He loved to smile. He loved to play little jokes on his brother and sister. He always made us laugh. He always had that big smile and twinkle in his eyes.
Hi, I'm a pumpkin. What's your name?
It was about 5 o'clock, and I left the house to go visit a friend.
Josh decided he wanted to go see a friend or check on playing with a friend, so I said, sure.
A man had rear-ended another car. The first driver got out and came back and saw the damage done to his vehicle, saw that this guy was really drunk, and said that he wanted to get the guy off the road. So he said, let's turn left here and exchange licenses, pulling off the main road. Well, when he pulled off, the other guy didn't stop. So this man proceeded to chase him at freeway speeds. They went around a curve and came down to the flat area. When they got to the flat area, they proceeded to pass vehicles. Josh had come to the intersection where the four-way stop was, and he looked to the left and he saw a lady slowing to stop. He looked to the right and there were stopped vehicles there. The third car back, the man says, I looked over and I saw the boy. The boy saw me. But when I looked forward again, I knew he'd never make it. Because at that point, the drunk driver passed the lady, blew the stop sign, went back to his correct lane, and hit Josh, not a foot from the curb, at 65 miles an hour. He threw him in the air and he hit him again. And then he threw him into an oncoming truck where his body lay.
I heard what sounded like two cars come together in the intersection in front of our house. And no brakes, no squealing or brakes anyway. Just the collision. And at the time, like I said, I thought it was two cars. So I went out the front door and the first thing I see is this cap. And I thought that, somebody run the stop, and Josh happened to be there. And the rest of the street was hidden by the house. So when I came around the corner, I saw his body. I didn't see his bike, I just saw his body. It was out in the middle of the street. So I started running. And when I saw him in the street, he was just so broken.
Jesse and Jake were right behind him, right at the edge of the curb. John says he shielded Josh's body from them, but they knew that was their brother. Jesse told me later that she was holding Jacob back, holding her little brother back as he was trying to get to his daddy and his brother.
I had to tell Jeannie that Josh was dead. That's something you don't plan on telling your wife, the mother of your children. No one should have to, not for the reasons of somebody driving drunk.
I often go up to the graveyard and tie a red ribbon around the headstone to symbolize the fact that my children were killed by a drinking driver.
A moving car is a deadly weapon in the hands of a drunk driver. It's no different than a gun or a knife or any other instrument that's used to kill. And the victim in this type of a crime is a victim of a violent crime.
Courtney was a victim. I was a victim. My whole family were victims. And we've served 3 years of a lifetime sentence with no possibility of parole.
We go through the scrapbooks, and Peter says, "Who's this? Who's dat?" And we tell him, "These are your brothers. Mommy and Daddy had 2 babies before they had you that they loved very much, just like they love you." But the time will come when Peter's going to say, "Where they?" And we don't quite know how we're going to answer that for him yet.
But then there's those days when are tough, when Romney comes up to you again and then he wonders, "Dad, but why? Why a baby? Courtney was just a baby. He didn't do anything wrong." And again, you don't know what to say as a father.
Yeah, a lot of times you hear, "Oh, well, people were drinking because they had stress." Well, you know, if you want to know stress, you go back to where we were, and that's stress, and having to deal with that. I mean, I don't know what stress they're talking about, stress on the job or what, but I mean, you can always get another job. We're not going to get another job.